James 4. Let me ask you a question today. Would you like to know your future? You say, well, I don't know. It's a two-edged sword. I mean, I guess some things would be good. I'd find out, am I going to marry that boyfriend, girlfriend? Am I going to get married at all? Am I going to stay married? Boy, if I could know the future, I could become wealthy. I can know which way the stocks are going to go. I can know what's going to go on with this thing or that thing. I mean, how many times have we said, boy, if I'd have known back then what I know now, you know, it could have made a big difference for us. But, I mean, there could be some bad things in that too. Do you want to know when you're going to die? I don't know. I mean, I know I'm going to die. You know you're going to die. We don't know exactly when. Sometimes, now what happens to most people if the doctor says to you, you know, in 6 months you're going to die because you have this? That's not good news to us, is it? We don't keen on that. We don't want to know something bad's going to happen to one of our family members. So some things about the future we don't want to know. And there's some things about the future that we may like to know. But you know, the future, like most things in life, simply requires balance. Because when it comes to the future, you know, there's some things I can control, and there's some things I can't control. And if you can, you know, when you look at life, a challenge to getting some balance in life and living life is figuring out what can I control, what can I not control. Because the things that I cannot control, it's a total waste of energy to worry about them. Amen, isn't it right? If I can't control it, can't do anything about it, my worrying isn't going to make a bit of difference. So if I can put something in the non-controllable area, then I can just scratch that off my list of worrying. I just cut all my worries way down, and my anxiety things. But another way to put that is, okay, when it comes to the future, what's God's part, what's my part? Because you see, we tend to live in extremes as humans. We tend to live out of balance. We always want to live at one end or the other of the spectrum. So when it comes to the future, you have the extreme of faith. Well, you know, whatever is going to be is going to be. I have no control over it. That's just fate. Whatever's going to happen, you know, I walk out in the road, and if I'm supposed to get hit by a car, I guess I'll get hit by a car. And if I'm not, I won't. It really won't matter. I have no control. Whatever's going to be is going to be. That's an extreme. That's really not true. Or the other over here is kind of the New Age thing, which really isn't new, but it's the idea that, you know what, I can create my own future. Basically, I can become my own God and create whatever I desire. You know, if I can believe enough and think positive enough, and I can just create this on my own. Well, that's not really true, because you can't become your own God, right? Some things you don't really have control over. But you know, what is our future? How is our future created? Our future is created by how we use the present. By how we use the present today, that creates our future. Some people say, well, this is what I want my future. I want to get married, and I want to live with a white picket fence and have 2.5 kids, and I want to be happy and have this nice job and then this happy retirement. I want all this stuff over here. And then they live in a way that's totally opposite, that will never take them to that desired future. And they act as if there's no correlation. I can just wish and hope that this will turn out, but I'm going to live this way. And you say, how in the world do you ever think you're going to get here if you're living like this? Our future is created by how we use the present. And so I want to look in these few verses here in James chapter 4, verses 13 to 17, and talk to us about creating our future. And I want to give us 4 principles to keep in balance on how we can discover and bring to pass God's desired future for you. Remember, a couple of weeks ago, I spoke to you about the sovereignty of God, the providence of God, and the free will of man. And how these things interplay. That God has a designed future for us. But it is not automatic, because I have a free will. I can choose to be a part of that and accept that, or to reject it, and that will alter my future. And the sovereignty of God brings all of his purposes to pass. And he works through his providence to people and circumstances. But what about me? What about you as individuals when it comes to that future? So let's take a look at these things, these 4 principles, and really comes down to that same kind of idea. What can I control? What can I not control? So look here at verse 13. Notice what he says in James 4. James says, "Come now, you who say today or tomorrow, we will go to such and such a city, spend a year there, and engage in business and make a profit." So these guys came up with a business plan. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to expand our business. We're going to go to this city, and we're going to execute on this business plan. We're going to stay there about a year. We're going to do this thing and this thing and this thing, and at the end of that, we're going to have so much profit. And they're going to put this out. So here's principle number 1. Principle number 1 when it comes to the future: don't make plans apart from God. Don't make plans as if God didn't exist. Don't make plans and leave God out of those. Another way to put that is don't presume upon the future. What happens to most of us? We've had, just a few months ago, we had graduation. And what's the question you ask most kids or adults when they graduate from college? What do you ask them? What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? And for most of them, they really don't have a clue. They're going to give you an answer. Well, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to study to be a neurophysicist, astro brain surgeon, and and whatever that is. They're going to make all this up. And you ever go back and read some old yearbooks? The things that people sign in there, who's voted the most likely to succeed, and who's this and who's that, and who's the other thing, and what all the things are. Have you ever noticed how most of those things don't happen? Read a survey one time said 80% of college grads don't use the degree in which they got it in. Why is that? Because when you're on your own, when you just try to pluck out of the air and figure out, what do I want to do with my life? What do I do with my... And that's not something for just 18-year-olds or 20-year-olds. Sometimes we're 45 and 55 and 65 and trying to figure that out. Because the reality is we come to different change points in our life, don't we? And so we come to those times when we get out of school or college and we figure out what we're going to do, and we get on a course, and then we get to, midlife, 45, 55. I wonder if I hit my goals, or, we get in touch with our mortality and say, wow, what am I going to do now? Or we get to retirement and try to figure out, what am I going to do now? The nest gets empty and all the kids leave home, and then we feel like, wow, what's my purpose now? So we're constantly coming to these change points in our life. We realize I was going along a certain way, and then gradually over time, things change with people and everything, and now here I am. It's like I'm in a new phase of my life, and all that old normal is gone. And it's not coming back. It's going to be different from here on out. So what am I going to do? And for most people, they make plans without any thought of God, as if we can predict the outcome with certainty. These guys said, well, we're going to go to this town, a particular place, we're going to do this in our business, and we're going to make this amount of profit, as if they could really predict and know for sure that all was going to happen. Here's the reality. The reality is, very few things in life go as planned. Amen. Have you discovered that? All you have to do is engage in a home remodeling project or building a home, and you quickly discover it always takes longer and costs more, inevitably. Very few things go as planned. We talk about, you'll hear that expression, the fog of war. When armies get in battle, things don't go to battle plan. And the coaches have game plans. And you get out and start to play the game, but you have a lot of variables you can't control. They're like people. And sometimes it may look like it's going like game plan, and sometimes it's not. And you have the opposing team, so then you've got to be constantly on the fly or at halftime rearranging, redoing the plan, because very few things go as planned. Here's another reality. Reality check number 2 is we have control over very little in life. Amen? We have control over very little in life. Control is an illusion. Most of us, to some degree or another, are control freaks. Amen? Some of you are maybe so passive, you don't care. But if you're like that, you're probably married to a control freak. Because they were looking for somebody like you. Somebody they could control, okay? And, but we can't control most things in life. Now, so you say, well, Pastor, is God against us planning for the future? No. Remember we said in Proverbs 6, he said, listen, go to the ant, you sluggard. Take a lesson from the ant. You know what the ant does? He plans ahead. You know, when it's harvest time and summertime, he gathers his food for the winter. And so he said, listen, the ant plans ahead. You need to go take a lesson from the ant. God's not against us planning ahead or having plans. The difference is our attitude. When I replace God with me, when it's about my plans and my agenda, then for all practical purposes, I am living as an atheist. It doesn't matter that I say I believe in God and that I love God and there is a God. If I make my plans without Him, there might as well not be a God. And so, God, let's look at history. God is truly the God of all history. How many world rulers have made their plans apart from God? And where are they now? And where are the plans? You look at the Hitlers of the world and the Stalins of the world and the Saddam Husseins and, you know, all the Genghis Khan and Napoleon. You look at all these people that want to conquer the world and do this and do that. And what happens to them? Well, they die. The kingdoms get divided. Or they get defeated, get thrown in Waterloo. Job 12:23 says, He makes the nations great, then destroys them. He enlarges the nations, then leads them away. History is truly God's story. God is in charge of it. God is the one who says, listen, I raise up nations and I bring them down. And I know their life cycle, how long they're there. You know, I read an article one time that said that the average corporation, the average business exists for about 40 years. I thought, oh man, that's way too short. That can't be right. But you know, if you take them all together and you realize how many businesses make it through one generation. And in your lifetime and my lifetime, how many huge corporations, I mean, worth, you know, billions and billions have gone out of existence. But we thought, oh, they're too big to fail. They'll never go, you know, they'll never go out of business. And it's because as people, we exist and then we're gone. And so history is really, it's all about God's plan, what God is doing. So principle number one, don't make plans apart from God. Don't become your own God. Bring God in. And don't make those plans and ask God to okay them, but rather ask God to give you the plan that He has for you. Principle number two, don't pretend to know the future. How many of you guys, we are fixers and problem solvers. Has your wife ever said to you, what are we going to do now? And we say, what do we say? We don't say, I don't know. You know, I mean, we don't want to admit that unless we're really desperate. We say something. You know, we make up something. We don't really know if it's going to work or not, but we make it up. It's the same thing we do with directions. Are you lost? No. Well, where are we? I'm figuring that out right now. Well, why don't you stop over there and ask for directions? No, because they're dumb. They wouldn't know. You ever know so much dumber people? You used to be able to stop into a gas station, find out, but to tell you you stop in a gas station, nobody knows where they're at. But if we don't know, have you ever had somebody stop you in the street and ask you, hey, where is so-and-so? And you don't have a clue, and you try to tell them where that is? We do that as guys all the time, don't we? They don't have the foggiest idea. We send them off on some goose chase somewhere, you know, because I'm not going to admit that I don't know where I'm going. And so it is with the future. You know, notice what he says, verse 14. Yet you do not know what your life will be like tomorrow. You are just a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. What's he saying? You don't even know what tomorrow is going to bring. He says, you have no control over me. You know what tomorrow, he says, our lives are like vapors. They're here and gone. They are temporary and brief. How could we possibly know or have control over events years from now when we don't even know what tomorrow is going to be like. So don't pretend we know the future. We can hope, we can wish, we can think maybe. But Job 7:17, he asked the question, he says, God, what is man that you even bother with him? The idea of Job was saying, we're so insignificant, we're so small. God, why do you even fool with us? In the big picture of things, what do we even matter? Now that was Job speaking as a discouraged human. The truth is, we do matter to God. Amen? And the truth is, that's not God's perspective on us. We are important to God. We are significant to God because out of all of His creation, we were the only ones made in His image. We were the only ones created in His image. And we were the only ones He sent His Son to die for. He didn't do that for angels. He didn't do that for cows or cats. He only did that for humans. And why are we so significant? We are so significant, and we become significant when we link our life to God's future purposes. But only God knows the future. Only God knows the future because He is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the ending. And He's omniscient. He knows all things. But only God knows that. All we know is today. We don't even know the end of the day, do we? We don't know what's going to happen by the time this day is over. Our whole life could get turned upside down in an afternoon. But God knows that. And God says, listen, why don't you link your life to my plan? And then your life will become significant. Because if we choose to live our life unlinked on our own, then what Job said is true. We are insignificant. And why would God even fool with us? We really have no purpose and no meaning. We will try to create one, but in the end it will be empty. It will be vanity, as the writer of Solomon says. But there are times that God gives us some glimpses of the future. Remember Daniel, when they were down in captivity, and Daniel prayed and said, God, how long are we going to be in captivity? How long will your people be in captivity? Could you give me an idea and show me the future a little bit? And that'd be kind of an audacious prayer. If you ever ask God to show you the future? And God did. God not only showed him the future for the next 7 years, but He showed him the whole end of time future. And sometimes God will do that. God shows us, for example, the future of the human race in relationship to, okay, we were created in His image and we sinned and we fell, but God said, I have this plan of redemption. And I'll show you what will happen. If you become a believer, I'll show you what will happen to you when you die. When you die, you'll be absent from the body to be present with the Lord. And I have a resurrection awaiting you. And you can know that you have a home in heaven waiting for me. You can know that that's your future. You can know the future after death for you. Would that need a God to tell us about that? God tells us, well, I'll tell you something else. Here, I'll give you this glimpse of the future. I'm going to come back again. I'm going to return. I'm going to rule. I'm going to make all the wrongs right. God said this is just a glimpse. I'm showing you that. Now, by the way, I'll show you this. Your enemy is defeated. You go to the last of the book of Revelation, we see Satan is chained in the pit forever. Our adversary, the one who constantly works against us. You ever had somebody on the job or in your life that you thought was an adversary? They were out to actively oppose and destroy you. And you had every once in a while this thought, it wasn't spiritual, but you just, for a moment, said, God, would you kill him? If you'll kill him, I won't tell anybody you did it. Well, the enemy behind all enemies is Satan, and God says, all right, listen, I'm showing you what happens here. Your enemy is done, is defeated. I'll show you how the game ends. And sometimes, when you get very close to God, when you desire to get a very deep, intimate walk with Him, and you're fully yielded to Him, and you listen for the small voice of the Spirit, God will tell you a detail about your future. And some of you may have experienced that in your life. I've had that a time or two, a few times. I remember when my wife was pregnant with our youngest son, Jared, and we were, back then you didn't know, didn't get to find out ahead of time what the sex was. And so we wanted it to be a boy, be a girl. What should we name? You couldn't come up with a name. And I was just reading the Bible on my own devotions. I was reading over Genesis.